Sometimes, the greatest legends are not born in palaces of gold, but in the shadows of poverty, pain, and prejudice. Before the world knew her as a billionaire, a television queen, and a symbol of hope, she was just a little girl in rural Mississippi, barefoot on dirt roads, clothed in worn dresses, carrying dreams far bigger than the world believed she deserved. She was told she wasn't good enough. She was silenced by racism, scarred by abuse, and crushed by circumstances that would have broken most souls. But within her heart burned a fire no one could extinguish. A fire that whispered, "You are more than this." This is the untold journey of Oprah Winfrey, a story not just of fame, but of unshakable courage. A reminder that even when the world says you are nothing, you can still rise to become everything. There are some stories that begin with light, and then there are stories that begin in the deepest shadows. This is the story of a little girl named Oprah Gayle Winfrey, born in 1954, in a small, forgotten town called Kosciuszko, Mississippi. Her world was not one of comfort. It was one of struggle, one of silence, one of survival. Her mother was just a teenager when Oprah was born. Her father, not there. Her grandmother, poor and weary, took care of her in a small wooden house that barely kept out the wind. Oprah's first toys were sticks, rocks, and scraps of cloth. Her first cradle was not a soft bed, but a corner of a room with no warmth. She wore dresses sewn from potato sacks, because there was no money for real clothes. And for this, the other children laughed at her. They pointed. They mocked. Imagine being a child and already carrying the weight of shame. Already being told you are less than them. You are nothing. But the shadows went deeper. In her childhood, Oprah suffered what no child should ever endure: abuse, violation, betrayal from those who should have protected her. She was just 9 years old when the innocence of her world was ripped away. And as if that pain wasn't enough, there was another enemy waiting outside: racism. In the segregated South of the 1950s, being poor was one burden. But being poor and black, that was a prison with invisible bars. The signs on the streets reminded her every day: whites only. Coloreds not allowed. Her skin was seen as a barrier, her dreams as impossible. For most children, these chains would have broken them. But Oprah had something different. She had a secret escape, a secret weapon. Her grandmother taught her to read before most children even knew their letters. By age 3, Oprah could stand in church and recite scriptures from the Bible. And when she spoke, people listened. They listened not because she was loud, but because her voice carried something rare. It carried truth. When she read, her voice trembled with passion. When she spoke, her eyes shined with something larger than herself. Even as a child, Oprah found a way to rise above her surroundings. In those moments, standing in a little church, dressed in rags with nothing but her voice, she was not a poor little black girl from Mississippi. She was powerful. She was unstoppable. She was free. And so, in the silence of those long nights, Oprah made a silent promise to herself. She would not let her beginning decide her ending. Because even in the shadows, a light had been born. There comes a time in every broken life when the first spark of strength appears. For Oprah, that spark was her voice. As a teenager, she moved from the harsh poverty of Mississippi to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, in Nashville, Tennessee. Vernon was strict. He demanded discipline, rules, and excellence. At first, Oprah resisted. She was wild, rebellious, carrying the scars of her childhood. But Vernon did not let her slip away. He gave her structure. He gave her books. He gave her direction. In the middle of all this, something happened. At school, Oprah began to speak. She joined the debate team. She entered speaking competitions. And every time she opened her mouth, something magical happened. The room grew still. The judges leaned forward. The audience felt her words as if they were being spoken directly to their souls. Oprah wasn't just speaking. She was connecting. Her pain, her struggles, her truth, it all poured into her voice. At just 17 years old, while most teenagers were still dreaming about their futures, Oprah was offered her first job at a local radio station, WVL, as a news reader. A young black girl, speaking live to the people of Nashville. It was unheard of. But with this opportunity came new wounds. The letters began arriving. Some listeners praised her talent, but others wrote poison. You don't belong on radio. Her voice is too colored. She doesn't sound professional. It was racism wearing the mask of criticism. And it hurt. Deeply. For a moment, Oprah thought about quitting, about letting those voices define her future. But something inside reminded her she had already survived worse. So she kept speaking. By the age of 19, she was co-anchoring the local evening news. The youngest anchor the station had ever seen, and the first black female anchor they had ever hired. But success never comes without struggle. Her co-anchors mocked her for her natural hair. Producers criticized her appearance. They told her to change her voice, her clothes, her very identity to become someone she was not. Still, Oprah pressed forward, because she knew the power of her authenticity. She knew that her greatest gift was not pretending, but being real. Yet the world wasn't ready. Soon, she faced a crushing blow. She was fired from her anchor job. The official reason: they said she was too emotional, that she let her feelings get in the way of serious journalism. In reality, her empathy, the very thing that made her special, was seen as weakness. And for Oprah, it was devastating. She went home, closed the door, and wept. The voices of doubt came back. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they were right all along. Maybe I don't belong here. But it was in that darkest moment that something shifted. Oprah realized something powerful. Her emotions were not her weakness. They were her strength. She wasn't meant to read cold headlines. She wasn't meant to hide her heart. She was meant to speak with it. She was meant to feel so others could feel too. This was the turning point, the seed of greatness. What she thought was an ending was actually a beginning. Many of us face this same battle. The world tells us we're too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too different. And for a while, we believe them. But the truth is, those very differences are what make us powerful. Oprah's rejection was the universe redirecting her, from news to something far greater. The stage was being set. The voice once mocked would one day move millions. The girl who had been told she was too emotional was about to change television forever. Failure has a way of whispering lies into your soul. For Oprah, losing her news anchor job felt like the end of everything she had worked for. She had risen so far, so quickly, only to be told she wasn't good enough, wasn't professional enough, wasn't right. The voices of her past returned: the children who had mocked her clothes, the abusers who had stolen her innocence, the racists who said she didn't belong. And now, professionals, people in suits and power, had confirmed the same thing. It felt like proof that she was not enough. But sometimes when life closes a door, it's because something far greater waits behind another. After being fired, Oprah was moved to a daytime talk show called People Are Talking. It wasn't prestigious. It wasn't glamorous. In fact, many saw it as a downgrade, a soft landing place for someone who couldn't cut it in real news. But when Oprah sat in that chair, something happened. For the first time, she didn't have to hide her emotions. She could laugh. She could cry. She could be herself. She wasn't just reading lines from a teleprompter. She was connecting with people. Her guests weren't statistics. They were human beings. And Oprah treated them that way. Within months, the show began to rise. Ratings climbed. Viewers tuned in, not for the headlines, but for her heart. But the higher she climbed, the louder the resistance grew. Critics questioned whether America was ready for a black woman to hold center stage. Sponsors hesitated. Executives doubted her mainstream appeal. And when she walked into boardrooms, she could feel it, the unspoken judgment. She wasn't thin enough. She wasn't light-skinned enough. She didn't look like the polished, glamorous hosts America was used to seeing. There were whispers that her success was just local, that she would never make it nationally. And yet, night after night, Oprah sat in that chair and proved them wrong, not by being who they wanted her to be, but by being unapologetically herself. But success doesn't erase scars. In her private moments, Oprah still carried the weight of her childhood trauma. The memories of abuse haunted her. The loneliness, the shame, the feeling of being unwanted. She once confessed that, as a young girl, she believed her life had no value, that she was born only to suffer. Now, here she was on television, in front of millions still battling those same demons. Her breaking point came not on stage but in silence. Alone in her room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she truly belonged in this world. She thought about quitting, walking away, returning to a quiet life where no one could judge her anymore. But deep down, something inside refused to die. A whisper, a reminder. You survived poverty. You survived abuse. You survived racism. You survived being told you were nothing. Do not quit now. And so Oprah made a choice. She decided that her scars would not be her shame, they would be her strength. She would not hide her story. She would tell it. She would not bury her emotions. She would embrace them. Because if she, a poor, abused, unwanted girl from Mississippi, could rise, then maybe someone watching, someone sitting in their own pain, could rise too. This was her breaking point. Not the kind that destroys you, but the kind that transforms you. Sometimes in life, the very thing that feels like the end is the beginning. Oprah lost her anchor job. She faced racism, rejection, and shame. But in that loss, she found her voice. And that voice was about to shake the world. When a seed finally breaks through the soil, it doesn't just grow, it reaches. For Oprah, the breaking point had given birth to something unstoppable. Her gift was not in hiding her emotions, it was in sharing them. And soon, the world would discover it too. In 1984, Oprah was invited to host a struggling morning show in Chicago, AM Chicago. The station executives saw her as a last attempt. Ratings were low, competition was fierce, and the show was on the verge of cancellation. They didn't expect much. But the moment Oprah walked onto that set, something shifted. She didn't just interview guests. She listened. She didn't just talk to the camera. She spoke directly to the people sitting at home, drinking coffee, trying to survive their own struggles. Within months, AM Chicago became the #1 talk show in the city. The shift was so dramatic, so undeniable, that within a year the show was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show. The magic of Oprah was simple, she was real. She laughed loudly. She cried openly. She admitted when she didn't know something. She never pretended to be perfect, because she knew perfection wasn't relatable. Her audience wasn't tuning in for celebrities or scandals. They were tuning in because Oprah spoke their language, the language of humanity. She asked the questions viewers wanted to ask. She shared her own struggles, her own insecurities. She wasn't a host on a stage, she was a friend in their living room. And that connection was electric. But even as her show exploded, the walls of prejudice tried to close in. Some critics claimed her success was a fluke. Others suggested she was too black to succeed nationwide. One major newspaper even ran a headline asking if America was ready for a talk show queen who wasn't white. The sponsors hesitated. Networks doubted. But the viewers, they chose differently. Millions tuned in every single day, across color lines, across class lines. Because when Oprah spoke, she spoke to the human heart, and the heart has no race. By 1986, The Oprah Winfrey Show went national. Within a year, it was the highest-rated talk show in the United States. She had done what no one believed possible, transformed daytime television. While others chased gossip and shock value, Oprah created conversations about healing, forgiveness, and growth. She wasn't interested in sensationalism. She was interested in transformation. And people responded. Her audience didn't just watch her. They trusted her. They invited her into their lives every single day. As her show grew, so did her influence. Publishers begged for her book recommendations. Businesses longed for her approval. Politicians wanted her endorsement. But Oprah's kingdom was never built on money or power. It was built on trust. When she gave away a car, it wasn't just a stunt, it was joy. When she introduced the world to new authors, those authors became bestsellers overnight. When she shared her personal struggles with weight, relationships, and self-worth, millions felt seen. Her throne wasn't made of gold. It was made of authenticity. A poor girl from Mississippi who wore dresses made from potato sacks, who was mocked for her skin, who was told she was too emotional and not good enough. Now, she was the most powerful woman in media. She didn't just host a talk show. She created a movement. And yet, even in her rise, she carried her past with her as a reminder of where she had come from, and as fuel for where she was going. This was more than success. This was a shift. The same girl who once felt invisible was now helping millions feel seen. The same girl who once had no voice had become the voice of a generation. Oprah had not just built a show. She had built a kingdom, one founded not on power, but on purpose. When a star rises high enough, it stops being a star. It becomes a sun. And everything around it begins to orbit its light. For Oprah Winfrey, her rise from talk show host to the most powerful woman in media was not just a career move. It was a revolution. By the early 1990s, the Oprah Winfrey Show wasn't just a TV program. It was a cultural phenomenon. Tens of millions of viewers tuned in daily. Advertisers fought for a spot. Celebrities prayed to be interviewed by her. But Oprah wanted more than just a successful show. She wanted ownership. Too many times, she had watched talented black performers be exploited by networks, given fame without control, visibility without power. She refused to let her life become another story of success without freedom. So, in 1986, she founded Harpo Productions, Oprah, spelled backwards. It was more than a company. It was a declaration: I own my story. And with Harpo, she didn't just star in her show, she owned it. She didn't just host. She produced. She made decisions. She signed the checks. It was the boldest shift of all, from talent to titan. In 1996, Oprah launched a simple idea: Oprah's Book Club. Publishers didn't expect much. After all, America was becoming more obsessed with television, not reading. But they underestimated the power of Oprah's trust. When she recommended a book, it didn't just sell, it exploded. Unknown authors became global bestsellers overnight. Entire generations rediscovered the power of reading. It was called the Oprah Effect. And it proved something bigger. Oprah wasn't just influencing television. She was shaping culture. By the 2000s, Oprah's empire had grown beyond imagination. Her production company, her magazine, her network of endorsements. In 2003, Forbes announced that Oprah Winfrey had become the first black female billionaire in history. Think about that. A girl born in poverty, wearing potato sack dresses, standing on a porch in rural Mississippi, had become a billionaire. Not by inheritance, not by luck, but by vision, persistence, and an unshakable belief that her story mattered. Even at her peak, the shadows of racism followed her. In 2013, while visiting Switzerland, Oprah entered a luxury store and asked to see a handbag. The clerk looked at her and said, "No, ma'am. That one is too expensive for you." Oprah could have shouted. She could have exposed the clerk. Instead, she told the story publicly, not to humiliate, but to remind the world that prejudice was still alive. Even as a billionaire, even as the most famous woman on earth, she could not escape the wounds of racism. But rather than let it break her, she turned it into another lesson, a reminder that money and fame cannot erase ignorance, but compassion and truth can shine a light on it. In 2011, Oprah ended her legendary talk show after 25 years. It was the end of an era. But endings are only beginnings in disguise. She launched the Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN, a channel dedicated to stories of growth, inspiration, and healing. It wasn't easy. The network stumbled at first. Critics called it a failure. Ratings dropped. Doubters returned. But Oprah had been here before. She knew what it meant to start small, to face rejection, to climb uphill. Slowly, OWN grew stronger. It became a home for powerful voices, from Dr. Phil to Ian Levanzant. It gave a platform to stories that mattered, stories that shifted lives. But Oprah's true kingdom wasn't measured in ratings or money. It was measured in lives changed. She built schools in South Africa. She funded scholarships for students across America. She donated millions to causes of education, poverty relief, and women's empowerment. In 2007, she opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for girls, giving hundreds of young women in South Africa the chance at education she never had. To Oprah, success without service was meaningless. Her wealth was not just hers to keep, it was fuel to ignite others. By the mid-2010s, Oprah had transcended media. She was no longer just a host, or even a mogul. She was a symbol of hope. Presidents sought her advice. Activists stood beside her. Millions around the world saw her not just as a celebrity, but as proof it is possible to rise. It is possible to overcome. Her words became more than quotes. They became lifelines. Her story became more than history. It became possibility. Oprah had shifted from survivor to leader, from leader to mogul, from mogul to legend. And yet she never forgot the girl she once was. The girl who sat on a porch in potato sack dresses. The girl who felt unwanted. The girl who thought her life had no value. That girl had changed the world. Every story has a turning point. Every life has a shift. For Oprah, that shift wasn't just one moment. It was a series of battles, heartbreaks, and breakthroughs that transformed a powerless girl into a global symbol of strength. But the question isn't just, how did Oprah do it? The question is, what can we learn from her story? Oprah's childhood was filled with pain most people cannot even imagine: poverty, abuse, abandonment, racism. By all accounts, she should have remained invisible. She should have disappeared into statistics. Another life crushed by circumstance. But she didn't, because she chose not to let her past define her future. Her life teaches us, your story does not end with your pain. It begins when you decide to rise above it. When Oprah cried on television, people said she was too emotional. When she admitted her struggles with weight, with heartbreak, with mistakes, people laughed. But those very moments were what connected her to millions. Her willingness to be vulnerable made her strong. Her honesty made her relatable. Her openness made her unstoppable. In a world that tells us to hide our wounds, Oprah proved that your scars can become your strength. Oprah faced racism at every stage of her life. Teachers who told her she would never be good enough. Executives who doubted a black woman could lead a national talk show. Clerks who assumed she couldn't afford luxury, even as a billionaire. But she did not let prejudice become her prison. Instead, she turned it into her platform. Her story is living proof. The world may try to silence you, but if you keep speaking your truth, your voice will echo louder than hate. Oprah didn't just want fame, she wanted ownership. She refused to be controlled by networks or executives. By building Harpo Productions, by creating OWN, she claimed her independence. She showed us that true success isn't just achieving, it's owning. Not just owning businesses, but owning your story. Owning your voice. Owning your future. Despite her billions, Oprah never measured her success in dollars. She measured it in lives touched, in children educated, in women empowered, in people who believed in themselves again because they heard her story. She reminds us, you can rise as high as you want, but your greatness is measured by how many others you lift along the way. So what is the legacy of Oprah Winfrey? It is not just the Oprah Winfrey Show. It is not just the magazines, the movies, or even the billions. Her legacy is the millions of hearts that shifted because she dared to live her truth. She showed the world that a poor black girl from Mississippi could rise higher than anyone imagined. And by doing so, she gave permission for others to rise too. Maybe right now you feel invisible. Maybe you feel like your past is too heavy, your pain too deep, your dreams too far. Maybe you've been told you're not good enough, too poor, too uneducated, too different. Maybe, just like Oprah once did, you feel forgotten. But remember this, Oprah's story is not just her story. It is yours too. Because the same shift that happened in her life can happen in yours. So, when you feel lost, when you feel powerless, when you wonder if your voice matters, think of the girl in potato sack dresses, sitting on a porch, dreaming of more. Think of how she shifted her life. Think of how she shifted the world. And remember, if she could rise from nothing, so can you. This is the power of When Life Shifted.